Kyle's Hot Dogs, the game where nothing makes sense. I love Kyle's Hot Dogs. If you haven't seen up to here, this is your first episode, you should probably go check out the other ones. Maybe a card up there or there. I never know. All right, Kyle laid in bed for a moment, thinking about the day ahead. He would produce another episode of his long-running show. Yes, Kyle thought about making breakfast, the same breakfast he'd been making for the past 9 years. Kyle thought about the clothes he would wear. They had not changed for a long time. Kyle waited for something new and interesting to enter his head. Something fresh, something exciting. Kyle continued to wait. Nothing came to mind. In a sudden moment of inspiration, Kyle threw his covers to the ground and stepped out of bed. Kyle had made a decision. Today would not be part of an old journey. Today would be the start of something new. Kyle walked over to his desk and opened the middle drawer. He slowly removed an ancient, withered stick of meat. Today, Kyle planned to make good on his childhood passion, the career he had abandoned to become a talk show host. Kyle looked caringly at the crusty hot dog in his hands. Then he smiled. Then he bent his lips downward and sucked the hot dog into his mouth and down into his stomach. Kyle had become a hot dog vendor. He must now prepare for his first day running a hot dog stand. We haven't checked outside or with Gabby, so that's what we'll attempt. First, get dressed. Kyle opened the closet. It was dark and he could only really see his hanging shirts. Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Kyle put on his hot dog suit, which he had made by stitching hot dogs together when he was a child. Feeling fairly hungry, Kyle bent over and took a large bite of his hot dog suit. He felt refreshed. It wasn't enough. Kyle continued to eat his clothing. Soon, Kyle had eaten most of the suit. The chunks that were left were enough to act as clothes, but barely. Kyle felt satisfied. The hot dogs had nourished him greatly, functionally giving him more time in his day. And now outside, leave apartment. Kyle walked out into the middle of the road and took a long pondering look around him. Kyle walked to the center of the agency entrance. It looked professional and had an attendant behind the desk. Kyle began rummaging around in the trash can looking for anything interesting. After picking through wrappers and cups, Kyle noticed there was a red button stuck to the bottom of the can. Kyle eagerly pressed the button. The wall above the trash can started shifting and spinning, eventually revealing a slab of pewter with an indent. The slab was thick and old. A plaque was embedded in the top reading, "The slab embraces only a true weapon." What do we consider a true weapon? Inspect slab. Okay, well, that's gonna be something we have to come back to. Let's approach attendant. Kyle walked over to the attendant and gave her a smile. "Hey, you," said Kyle. "What's going on? How's life?" Before the attendant could answer, Kyle continued. "Do you enjoy your life? Are you happy? How are your home relationships? How much debt are you in?" Kyle started pounding his fist emphatically on the table. The attendant brightened. "I have been waiting for someone to ask." Kyle and the attendant spent several hours in an upbeat conversation about life. Both enjoyed. That's it. That was it. Why? Let's go. Oh, you can only ask her one thing. Pip. Let's go see if we can... Tech store? What do you think we can do in the tech store? Kyle walked into the clean white tech store. He was greeted by Technogym, an elaborate cutout mascot with flashing lights. Excited by his new job as a hot dog salesman, Kyle decided to share his happiness with the store clerk. As Kyle opened his mouth to speak, his stomach contracted violently. Kyle started spewing out undigested chunks of hot dog and chunks of his stomach lining. That's terrifying! The hot dog Kyle had eaten earlier had multiplied in his stomach, causing a massive amount of hot dog pieces to grow inside him. After a couple of minutes of spewing, Kyle stopped. He looked at the attendant. "Oh, you know." Kyle rolled his eyes, smiled slightly, and shrugged. The attendant did not seem to want to respond. So Kyle, oh, you know. We've got the ending that's about to happen. Let's get dressed and go talk with Gabby. Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor's door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. She looked at Kyle expectantly. Greet and start conversation. Good morning, neighbor, said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. Gabby, Kyle said, I think I've had a big life change today. Gabby raised her eyebrows. I'm giving it all up, Gabby. It's time for me to follow my heart. I'm going to sell hot dogs now. Kyle looked into her eyes. Gabby looked over her shoulder, trying to find an escape. Good job, Kyle, she said. Sounds like you better get started on that right away. Kyle realized that Gabby was right and returned back to the street. Marketing agency. Pretend to die. We're gonna pretend to die because that's what you do. Kyle let out a blood-curdling scream and fell onto the attendant's desk face first. The attendant did not buy Kyle's death. She continued working. Trying to sell the effect, Kyle lay on the attendant's desk for several hours, motionless. Eventually, Kyle sheepishly stood up and wordlessly walked out of the agency. Dang it, that's not one either. I know what one is. We're gonna start over and we're gonna get all our stuff and then we're gonna do an ad agency thing. What we did was we grabbed the cart, we grabbed hot dogs from the pantry, then we got dressed in the hot dog suit, then we ate it, and we had 14 hours, and now we're gonna market. Ask about marketing. Kyle took a big breath. So how does the whole marketing thing work? Well, said the attendant, we offer several packages for old and new media, starting around $100, customized for your needs. Kyle bit his lips. Right. So what can I get for free? The attendant stared blankly. Not really anything. Kyle didn't answer and stood staring for a moment, then walked away. Oh my goodness. So I went back through it all, and this time I grabbed change instead, so we can do this properly, I hope. Kyle walked over to the attendant and gave her a smile. There you go, purchase marketing. Kyle walked to the desk and placed his pocket change on the table. How much marketing can I get for this? Kyle asked. The attendant looked at his offerings. Maybe like a piece of paper on the message board outside? Kyle wordlessly purchased the flyer and walked out the door. And now we go to work. Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first day as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. Kyle took out his cart pieces and began to assemble them. With a little trouble, Kyle was able to finish constructing a serviceable hot dog stand. Kyle then started to place the hot dogs he had brought into the cart. They were cold, but Kyle had never cooked his hot dogs as a child and didn't want to start now. His prep finished, Kyle looked around and smiled, waiting for his first customer. After a few minutes of waiting, one customer came to Kyle's stand. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, the customer bought 2 hot dogs and left, pleased. About 30 minutes later, 2 girls came over to the stand and bought 1 hot dog each. Over the next few hours, Kyle received a healthy handful of customers, each left with a hot dog and a smile. As evening fell, Kyle found himself to be just about sold out of hot dogs. Tired, but pleased, Kyle closed his stand for the day and wheeled it home. Kyle had made a modest but livable amount of money at his hot dog stand that day. It'd be hard, but if he kept his focus, he could make it work. Millions of fans were confused as to why Kyle hadn't shown up for his show that evening, but the few that had bought a hot dog from him understood. They knew that Kyle made a decent hot dog salesman. Kyle was a salesman! Hey! That one was nice. That was comforting. This time, what we're gonna do is we are going to get the hot dog stand and the hot dogs, and we are going to try to steal Technogym. Because Technogym, maybe he, I don't know, Technogym is awesome. We're Technogym! Just calm down. Steal Technogym. Quickly before the attendant could acknowledge him, Kyle grabbed Technogym by the shoulders. Finding that Technogym's cardboard feet were bolted to the ground, Kyle started to pull upwards forcefully. After several tugs, Technogym broke free, leaving one foot and one leg behind. Kyle glanced at the attendant, who was staring, bewildered, and ran outside. All right, we're gonna waste time now, and then we'll go to work. His prep finished, Kyle looked around and smiled, waiting for his first customer. It was always Technogym. But after waiting a moment and getting bored, Kyle decided to use Technogym as his first customer. It's not what I expected. Kyle set Technogym in front of his cart. He stood and looked at him for a second, smiling. Then he spoke. Technogym, said Kyle, smirking slightly. Would you like to buy my first hot dog? Technogym refused. Kyle's smirk turned into a frown. Technogym, why don't you want to buy one of my hot dogs? Technogym was not able to eat hot dogs. Kyle was exasperated. Well then, Technogymbo, what could I possibly offer you that you'd be interested in? Technogym would be happy to eat Kyle. Kyle stared blankly at Technogym, confused. Jimbo would be happy to eat Kyle. Technogym reached across the hot dog stand and hoisted Kyle towards his face. In one smooth motion, Technogym opened his mouth and ingested Kyle whole. There was a quiet sound of something sliding down the inside of Technogym's stomach. Then there was silence. Oh, how the tables have turned. It's just a Technogym. Just Technogym. That was a good one. Gotta love Technogym, right? The other thing we can do is we can ask Gabby for a pen, so we'll do that too, but we'll get dressed first. I like to get dressed, what can I say? A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. She looked at Kyle expectantly. Good morning, neighbor, said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. Gabby, this is important, said Kyle. Do you have a pen I could borrow? Kyle, said Gabby. Don't you have even a single pen of your own? No, Gabby, said Kyle, clutching her arms and looking into her eyes. I haven't written since high school. Gabby stared at Kyle and pursed her lips. After a moment, she took a pen out of her pocket. Kyle, I'll give you a pen, but please be careful with what you write. Harsh words are a weapon to wield carefully. Kyle mumbled agreement, took the pen, and skipped away from Gabby's house. Weapon! All right, visit marketing agency. Rummage in trash. We're gonna press. The wall above the trash can started. We ran out of time. Nope. Oh, crap. Scavenge. Get the letters. Go get a pen. Right, get the pen. Cool. Return to apartment. Bedroom. Desk. Kyle made his way over to the desk and sat down. Kyle took out the letters from his pocket and set them on the desk. Kyle looked at the letter in front of him for a moment. Then, in a burst of inspiration, he started to write. Kyle decided to make some important comments about his high school crush that had been on his mind. After being upfront and honest, Kyle had produced a letter that was definitely weapon-like in nature. Ha ha ha! Smart boy! Kyle eagerly pressed the button. The wall above the trash can started shifting and spinning, eventually revealing a slab of pewter with an indent. The slab was thick and old. A plaque was embedded in the top reading, "The slab embraces only a true weapon. Insert weapon-like letter." Kyle took the rewritten letter in his hand and pressed it into the indent. It fit perfectly, as if it had been written for this very purpose. Kyle continued to watch. The letter began to glow softly. It sank deeper and deeper into the slab. Kyle was fixated on the letter. He watched it slowly turn and start to glow. In a flash of light, Kyle was in his old high school, watching himself interact with his schoolmates. He watched himself walk from class to class. He saw himself eat a napkin to try to impress Abigail. He then saw himself eat several textbooks to try to impress Abigail. He saw himself get kicked out of the library. Kyle watched himself write letter after letter to his crushes, friends, and even just people that seemed down. They weren't mean letters or even strange. Kyle had written them to be cheery and uplifting. Each one ended crumpled in his hand, never delivered. Kyle remembered the compassion he had for people around him, but he saw his inability to express it well. Kyle saw the decisions he had made about his career. He watched himself consider going into hot dog sales. Kyle watched himself choose to forego his passion and choose a career in entertainment instead. His career quickly grew. He became known, popular, famous. Kyle didn't change. Kyle continued to be himself. The audience saw his strange genuinity. Kyle continued to run his talk show night after night. Viewers tuned in to laugh at his antics and strange personality. Slowly, Kyle's story came to present day. Kyle was staring at the wall of the marketing agency, clutching a letter. With a start, Kyle became aware of himself. Kyle walked out of the agency and into the approaching evening. The sky was deep orange. Wisps of clouds streaked left and right in graceful patterns. The sun was setting. Kyle wouldn't be selling hot dogs tonight, or the next night, or ever. Kyle traveled to his studio. There he met Rachel. They filmed an episode of his show together. The audience loved it. At the end of the night, Kyle walked outside and directed himself towards his apartment. As he traveled, his hand brushed the crumpled letter in his pocket. Kyle squeezed them in his palms. They would never leave his ownership. There was no need. Kyle had found his own way to deliver them. Aw, that was heartwarming as butt. Good guy Kyle. So I'm struggling to find an ending. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start testing stuff and I'm going to find the ending. I'm not going to read the endings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the blue card that looks like something new, and then I'll restart and show you how to get it, and then we'll read it together. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna open the closet, choose an outfit, hot dog suit, chew on suit, whatever. Boom, we're gonna sit at the desk, we're gonna check in the drawer, we're gonna get a small key. Go back to the kitchen now. We're done in here. Head to the kitchen. Don't get the cart. Move to kitchen. Check pantry. Unlock it with a small key. Look in the pantry. Grab some hot dogs. Good for you. Then go back to the kitchen. Open the fridge. And then eat the fridge. Why? I don't know. Kyle pointed his neck directly upwards and hoisted the fridge on top of his face. Somehow, miraculously, he wrapped his mouth around the device. He started to swallow. In one slow, horrible movement, the fridge slid down Kyle's throat. After many gurgles, pops, and snaps, Kyle felt relatively sure the fridge would not come back out. He walked to the center of the kitchen and now just waste the time. Waste all the time you want. Kyle swept his hot dogs into a pile and sat on the concrete next to them. I don't understand why this is the way that it is, but there you go. As Kyle sat, something occurred to him. If he were to run a hot dog stand, how would he keep his hot dogs clean and safe to eat? Kyle sat on the ground, feeling a little upset and unsure of himself. But in a sudden burst of inspiration, Kyle spewed the contents of his stomach onto the sidewalk. There, upright, bright in the sun, was his fridge. Kyle pulled the sticky door open. It was still slightly cold. Kyle thought it would be fine to store the hot dogs. Kyle began to shove the hot dogs into every section of the open fridge, storing dozens among the crested food. Soon, Kyle had stored every hot dog he had brought with him, and his mission was complete. But Kyle did not stop. Kyle started to rip chunks of concrete out of the sidewalk and put them into the corners of the fridge. Kyle continued stashing. Soon, there was no sidewalk left, but Kyle was still not finished. He started to grab at nearby items to insert into the fridge. Trash cans, light posts, and passerbys could not withstand him. All were stashed in Kyle's fridge. A large crater was slowly formed, demonstrating Kyle's ravenous hoarding. It became visible from space. That is when the slug invasion came. They came over the buildings from the sewers and sprouted from the earth. This was not a normal slug migration. The slugs were intentional. The slugs were dominant. As Kyle looked around him, the slugs moved to cover every surface in a dominant takeover. The fridge, full to bursting, past any imagination, stood by him. It shone bright among the slugs. Kyle looked upon his creation, a magnum opus of storage. He loved it. It was his, but he knew what he needed to do. Kyle threw open the fridge, sending a shockwave of cement, people, and hot dogs flying in every direction. The slugs, blown away by the outburst of material, were blasted into the sky. Looks like the slugs are blasting off again. Ding. Instantly, they flew away, and far, far out of sight. The city looked as if it had never been touched. The slugs had been halted for now. Kyle looked around himself, observing the remains of his beautiful creation. It was sad, yes, but Kyle smiled. He had delayed the coming slug invasion for another year. Kyle fought the slugs. What? I don't understand how he got from I'm gonna eat a fridge to I'm gonna fight a slug invasion. Oh, that's 5. We did it. We got all 5 for this episode. We have 1 more episode left. 5 endings. If you want to see those 5 endings, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button. If you want to become a channel member, hit that join button. If you share this video, any and all of that would make my heart go, why slugs? And as always, have an amazing rest of your day. Here's your heart and your blink. Bye.
What do we consider a true weapon? Oh, you know. Good. Oh, how the tables have turned. This is a Technogym. Weapon. Smart boy. Kyle took the rewritten letters in his. Kyle took the rewritten letter. Kyle. I don't understand why this is the way that it is. But there you go.